The stars burned cold and distant in the void of space, their light barely piercing the thick atmosphere of the desolate moon where Captain Elias Vorn had crash-landed. His ship, the Starblade, was a smoldering wreck, its hull torn open by the gravitational pull of the moon's unstable core. Elias had been on a routine reconnaissance mission when the anomaly struck, dragging him down to this forsaken rock. Now he was stranded, alone, and running out of time. The moon was a barren wasteland, its surface cracked and jagged, with rivers of molten lava cutting through the landscape like veins. The air was thin, barely breathable, and the temperature swung wildly between freezing and scorching. Elias had managed to salvage a portable oxygen generator and a plasma pistol from the wreckage, but he knew they wouldn't last long. He needed to find shelter, and fast. As he trudged across the rocky terrain, his boots crunching against the brittle ground, he noticed something unusual, a faint glow emanating from a nearby crater. Curiosity piqued, he approached cautiously, his pistol at the ready. Peering over the edge, he saw a figure lying motionless at the bottom. It was a woman, her skin a pale, almost luminescent blue, with faint, glowing markings that pulsed like a heartbeat. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen, part human, part something else. A half-mutant, perhaps, or an alien hybrid. Elias hesitated. He had no idea who, or what, she was, but he couldn't leave her to die. He scrambled down the crater and knelt beside her, checking for signs of life. Her breathing was shallow, and her skin was cold to the touch. She was alive, but barely. "Hey," he said softly, shaking her shoulder. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that shimmered like liquid silver. She stared at him, confused and disoriented, before her gaze sharpened with alarm. She tried to sit up, but winced in pain, clutching her side. Elias noticed a deep gash across her ribs, oozing a strange, iridescent fluid. "You're hurt," he said. "Let me help you." She recoiled, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice melodic but laced with tension. "Captain Elias Vorn," he replied. "I crashed here. My ship is gone. I'm stranded just like you." She studied him for a moment, as if weighing his words. Finally, she nodded. "I am Lyra," she said, "and you're right. We're both in danger. But not just from this moon. There are others. Hunters. They're after me." Before Elias could ask more, a low, guttural growl echoed through the crater. He spun around, raising his pistol, just as a hulking creature emerged from the shadows. It was a monstrous thing, with armored scales, razor-sharp claws, and glowing red eyes. It snarled, bearing rows of jagged teeth, and lunged at them. Elias fired, the plasma bolt striking the creature's shoulder and forcing it back. "Run!" he shouted, grabbing Lyra's arm and pulling her to her feet. They scrambled out of the crater, the creature hot on their heels. Elias fired again, this time hitting it square in the chest. It roared in pain, but kept coming, its rage undiminished. Lyra stumbled, her injury slowing her down. Elias cursed under his breath and scooped her into his arms, ignoring her protests. He ran as fast as he could, his lungs burning from the thin air, until they reached a narrow cave hidden behind a cluster of jagged rocks. He set her down gently and turned to face the entrance, his pistol raised. The creature burst into the cave, its massive frame barely fitting through the opening. Elias fired again and again, each shot striking true, but the beast seemed unstoppable. It swiped at him, its claws grazing his arm and sending him sprawling. He hit the ground hard, his pistol skidding out of reach. The creature loomed over him, its jaws dripping with saliva. Elias braced himself for the end, but then Lyra stepped in front of him, her body glowing with an otherworldly light. She raised her hand, and a burst of energy erupted from her palm, striking the creature and reducing it to ash. Elias stared at her, stunned. What are you?" Lyra turned to him, her expression grim. "I told you. There are hunters after me, and now they've found us." Over the next few hours, Lyra explained her story. She was the daughter of an alien king, ruler of a powerful interstellar empire. Her mother, however, had been human, a scientist who had been captured during a raid on a distant colony. Lyra was the product of their union, a hybrid with abilities that made her both valuable and dangerous. Her father's enemies saw her as a threat, while others saw her as a weapon. She had been on the run for years, trying to escape those who sought to exploit or destroy her. Elias listened in silence, his mind racing. He had no idea what he had gotten himself into, but he couldn't abandon her. "Not now. We need to get off this moon," he said finally. "If we can reach my ship's distress beacon, maybe we can signal for help." Lyra shook her head. "The hunters will intercept any signal. They'll be here soon." As if on cue, the ground began to tremble, and a deafening roar filled the air. Elias and Lyra rushed to the cave entrance, only to see a massive warship descending from the sky. It was sleek and black, bristling with weapons, and emblazoned with the insignia of Lyra's father's empire. "They're here," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. Elias clenched his fists. "Then we fight." The battle was fierce and chaotic. The hunters, elite soldiers clad in advanced armor, stormed the moon, their weapons cutting through the terrain like butter. Elias and Lyra fought back with everything they had, using the environment to their advantage. They set traps, ambushed their enemies, and used Lyra's powers to devastating effect. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. As the fight dragged on, Elias realized they couldn't win. The hunters were closing in, and Lyra was growing weaker from using her abilities. He made a decision. "Lyra," he said, grabbing her shoulders, "you need to go. I'll hold them off." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, I won't leave you." "You have to," he said firmly. "You're too important. Your people need you. Your father needs you." Before she could protest, he kissed her, a brief, desperate kiss, and then shoved her toward the cave's hidden exit. "Go," he shouted. "Now." Lyra hesitated, her heart breaking, but she knew he was right. She turned and ran, her glowing form disappearing into the darkness. Elias turned to face the hunters, his pistol in hand. He fought bravely, taking down as many as he could, but it wasn't enough. A plasma bolt struck him in the chest, and he fell to his knees, his vision fading. As the hunters closed in, Elias smiled. He had done his duty. He had saved her. When Lyra reached her father's ship, she collapsed into his arms, sobbing. The alien king, a towering figure with the same silver eyes as his daughter, listened as she told him about the human who had given his life to save her. Moved by her story, the king ordered his fleet to retrieve Elias's body. Using their advanced technology, they revived him, healing his wounds and restoring him to life. When Elias awoke, he found himself in a grand chamber, surrounded by Lyra and her father. The king stepped forward, his expression solemn. "You saved my daughter," he said. "For that, you have my eternal gratitude. You are a hero, Captain Vorn, and you will always have a place among us." Elias looked at Lyra, who smiled through her tears. He had given his life to save her, and in return, he had gained a new family, a new purpose, and a love that transcended the stars.